Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Lost Society, Hell is a State of Mind, out March 6 on Nuclear Blast. The album has 10 tracks, 38 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, I want to bring up 2 points, 2 different ideas that I had while I was listening to it. The record has a different approach, or it could have a different experience, I should say, depending on your approach. If you listen to this album on a digital format, there are a few songs on this record that are going to feel a little bit out of place in terms of the attributes that they have and what they offer to the record. But if you're listening to this album on a vinyl, where you have a clear defined side A and side B, the experience is going to be quite different. It's going to feel more fluid, it's going to feel more organic. The tracks merge better with one another, and where they are placed in the overall track listing starts to make a lot more sense. So this is one of those albums that could have 2 completely different experiences depending on which way you're approaching this album, digitally or vinyl. The other aspect of the track listing or the overall structure of this album that I think it's important to mention is that this album, for as many uniquenesses as it has, it also has a lot of similarities. And what the band did was they spread out the songs that have a lot more in common, putting songs that create bigger riffs in between them, creating that space, creating that riff that exists between the differences of the songs a lot bigger, making it more noticeable, making a much bigger divide, if you will. And I think this is an important aspect. For an album that's 38 minutes in length and has 10 songs, if you had a cluster at any point in time on this record of songs that just seem too close together or too similar in experience and atmosphere and sound, the album would create a sense of repetition, and that's not what you want when you have only 10 tracks and 38 minutes in length. You want to create dynamic movement, you want the album to feel more fluid, more engaging, and you want to minimize that repetition that always exists on any record. And I felt like they did a wonderful job with that, considering where they placed these tracks. Really creating that riff between songs, really creating that divide between songs that allows you to feel that every time you go into a new track on this album, you're discovering something new. Even if that track is already offering you something that you've seen before, still feels new in the context of that specific song. So I think this is an album that from a design standpoint has a lot to be said about it, and it's an album that obviously offers a lot more than what it meets the eye at first glance. Once you get into the sound, this album has 2 ingredients that I find that are extremely important. First ingredient is the symphonic aspect of this record. It's a very symphonic laced record. I don't find necessarily that the symphonic elements on this album are driving the experience. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is a symphonic metal album, because it's not. And if you're familiar with a band like Ice Nine Kills that uses a lot of symphonic elements to create more of a cinematic approach, this album falls in line more with that with that sense of atmosphere and how you can use those symphonic elements, not necessarily in a traditional symphonic metal way, but more for an atmospheric purpose, and create size and make the songs feel a little bit more cinematic or even theatrical. This album definitely has that in spades from start to finish. It doesn't mean that every song has it. It doesn't mean that every song uses it in the same way, to the same level, to the same extent, but it's definitely a common denominator throughout the record that plays an important role on how big, how robust, and how powerful the sound is throughout the entire album. It also plays a huge role in that cinematic theatrical aspect that I felt that the overall vibe of this album transmits to the listener in a very clear way. The other aspect of the sound on this record that I thought was really interesting is that for an album that has that sort of symphonic allure to it, man, the guitars are quite heavy on this record, consistently heavy. Obviously, it's not like every song is a death metal song. Not every song is going to have a very heavy riff that controls the paradigm of the track itself. But overall, when you look at the big picture of this album, it's a heavy guitar sounding album. It's also a versatile guitar sounding album. It has acoustic guitars, it has more melodic riffs, it has a lot of grooviness, and then it has a lot of heaviness. Some thrash metal riffs as well, which brings that early days of Lost Society into this new era of the band. So from a guitar standpoint, it's not a one-dimensional album. It's an album that really relies on that heavier side of the band, And then outside of that, they added other elements that makes the overall guitar sound feel more texture, more rich, more powerful, if you will, because it just allows the songs to also go in different directions. It allows the songs to have different moods, different vibes, different atmospheres, and it allows those symphonic elements to play a role, but still using the guitars as the main catalyst of the overall sonic experience of this album. Outside of the guitars and outside of the symphonic elements, which in my opinion are definitely the two main pillars of the overall sound experience that this record has, I have to mention drums and bass, because the bass on this album pops quite a bit throughout. The mix really allows the bass to play an important role on this record. It's not hidden at all, but it's also not jarring. And I think that's a fine line that you can walk on an album that has this sort of experience, that has this sort of sound that's more modern metal sounding. To have the bass as predominant as it is without completely distorting the experience and becoming very jarring, like I said, it's definitely an art form. And I like the fact that I can hear the bass quite a lot, but the bass does not impact in a negative way the overall experience that they're trying to create, that overall cinematic, theatrical vibe, atmosphere that this record has. The drums are heavy, powerful, but I think most important, I felt overall the drums really help give thickness and give substance to the way the sound comes across. It makes the record feel more full, more complete. It makes the record feel more mature from that perspective. It gives soul to the album. And all around, I felt like the drums also helped in terms of the emotional aspect that this record has, perhaps more visible in the vocal performance, obviously, but the emotional aspect of this album could also be represented with the drum sound and the impact that that drum sound has on each and every single song, with a very specific impact, with a very specific pinpoint precision impact that each song offers a somewhat quite different perspective from track to track, allowing the drums to be overall uniform in terms of what they give, but not necessarily uniform in the way they present themselves. So it's a great album sonically across all the points, bass, guitars, drums. The production behind this album really enhances each and every single one of these elements and gets the most out of them, creating a super interesting sounding album all around. Then once you get into the vocals, Sammy uses all the tools that he has available in his arsenal. This is as dynamic of a record vocally as it is sonically. I think it's actually even more dynamic vocally than it is sonically. From the harsher vocals to the screaming vocals to the more melancholic approach to the backing vocals, the layers, a little bit of choirs. I mean, this album has it all from a vocal standpoint, and I felt that Sammy was super loose on this record. I think this is, in my opinion, in a very long time, one of the best sounding albums that the band has ever done. And when I mean sounding albums, I mean sounding albums musically, but also sounding albums vocally. This album feels natural to me. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like it had to be contrived. It had to be created. It had to be molded. It just feels a lot more natural. And because it feels a lot more natural, the way the vocals and the way the sound comes across hits you with that more of an emotional standpoint that allows you as a listener to connect with these tracks on a much deeper level. Anytime you can connect with a record and you can connect with songs at a deeper emotional level, the album immediately becomes more memorable, immediately becomes better, because it becomes ingrained in your very own DNA. So when you're listening to these songs, when I was listening to this record, I just felt like everything was there because it needed to be there. It was not overthought, it was just executed. This is a straightforward, well-executed record all around. As far as favorite songs are concerned, this is not an easy task, because to be honest with you, I like all 10 of them. But I picked 3 songs that have unique characteristics to them, so that I can give you a better idea, an even better idea, I should say, of what this album is all about. I want to start off with Afterlife. This is the opening track. Now, this is a super interesting song for me, because I felt like this song really brought together 2 sounds, 2 experiences, and 2 influences, if I'm going to be specific as far as bands are concerned, that are very popular right now and that resonate with me, and I think that they're going to resonate with a bunch of listeners out there. This is a track that has the verses in choruses. The choruses and verses are completely segregated from one another in terms of what they remind you and the influences behind them. If I look at the way this song is put together, it's a blend of Falling in Reverse and Ice Nine Kills. It's more of a Falling in Reverse style track in the verses due to the heaviness, due to the vocal approach, almost a hip-hop style vocal approach, and then more Ice Nine Kills in the chorus because it becomes more cinematic, it becomes a little bit brighter, a little bit bigger, more pompous. So I love this track. I love the intensity that the track have. The vocals are outstanding, the sound is phenomenal, but this dynamic of bringing in influences from two bands that I really like, creating a hybrid track that still feels so intense, so aggressive, bringing also some of that energy that we saw in earlier records from Lost Society into the fold, just now having that energy but surrounded by a more modern approach sonically and even vocally, makes this song definitely stand out from the crowd immediately. What a great opening track. It grabs your attention right from the get-go. Then you have Kill the Light. This is also a super interesting song because this is where you see some acoustic guitars creeping in. Now, they don't just creep in at the opening of the song, they creep in back in at the chorus, I should say. This allows the song to feel more connected and it allows the song to feel more complete. Had the acoustic guitars been just at the opening, unless you're coming back with them at the closing so that the song can feel like it goes full circle, what else are you going to do? It just would feel like you're adding an element, but you're not adding a sense of continuity to that element. Now, I like the way it starts because it has those acoustic guitars. The guitars then morph into a more, robust sound, but still keeping the same harmony going. And then you start to see those acoustics coming back in the chorus. It allows the track to feel more fluid. It allows the track to feel more natural. It's easier for the listener to follow along to a song that has this style, this sort of structure and design. I really like this track vocally as well. It feels massive at times. It has like pockets where the vocals really come through powerfully. And when the vocals come through, you have the symphonic elements behind them that elevate them, bringing that cinematic, theatrical approach to the song, making the song feel even bigger, more powerful. It's just a track that's incredibly dynamic, not afraid of changing on the dime, not afraid of adding new pieces, new elements, not afraid of stripping down something in order to focus on something else. Like to have a bridge of the song which is vocals and symphonic elements and stripping everything down really allows you to emphasize certain aspects of the track, those emotional, cinematic, theatrical aspects of the track. So I really like how this song is put together. It feels haunting at times. The vocal delivery feels connected throughout, regardless of how dynamic it is. It's just a great track all around, super unique in terms of how the symphonic pieces are used, how the orchestrations come across, and also the inclusion of the acoustic guitars really changes a little bit of the dynamics musically. Last but definitely not least, No Longer Human. I would say this is a ballad of sorts. It's hard to call it a ballad, but it really feels like a ballad. It definitely has softer verses, as a ballad normally does, and then it has a little bit more of a pompous chorus with more volume, heavier guitars, bigger size, as a ballad normally has. So it's a really interesting track because it uses the symphonic orchestral pieces more as an overtone, more as a layer that like kind of lingers through the track, but really helps emphasize the emotion of the song. And what's a ballad without emotion? You cannot have a ballad and not have emotion behind it. So I felt that not only are you getting an emotional experience out of the vocal performance and the lyrics within that vocal performance, the symphonic orchestral pieces on this track also enhance that same emotion. It allows those emotions to kind of rise all the way to the top, making the song really vibrant with a very rich and textured atmosphere and sound as well. It's a really interesting track because of that ballad-esque style approach that the song has, that on its own allows the song to stand out. And this song follows Kill the Light, which is a really interesting dynamic because the two songs, in my opinion, are perhaps two of the most unique songs that this album offers. The album has a very funny way of throwing songs at you, allowing you, like I mentioned earlier, allowing you to forget some of the commonalities and then throwing something else at you. These two songs have similarities, but yet they're very different. But having them back to back works really well. It actually allows you to feel the uniquenesses that they have becoming more powerful than the commonalities that glues them together. So I think this is a great track by Lost Society on an overall great record. Let me know your thoughts on this album. Once again, the record drops March 6th on Nuclear Blast. Use the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles, your ideas of what you would like out of this record. If there's anything else you want to know about the album, just hit me up in the comment section. I'm dying to hear what you have to say, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.